solution with a whole lot of truth. The Remedy Revolution is here for you. Ooh.
And now here's your host, Erin Page.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Remedy Revolution. This is Erin. Today's guests are very special. I have never met them, but I'm very excited to have this conversation. This is the very first time I'm seeing them. Please welcome Dr. Ramlall and Amit, who are from the Chintan Project, a really amazing project that they're working on getting businesses up and running, helping people to follow their passions. I find everything that you're doing so interesting. So welcome to the show to both of you.
So Erin, thank you very much for having us on today. Amit is with me, and for most of this, he will be answering. For your audience, Amit types on this laminated letter card, a 50-cent piece of cardboard and laminated plastic. And you will hear me speaking for myself sometimes, and you will also hear a tapping sound, which is Amit typing on this card, and then you will hear me reading what he says. So so you'll see how he would answer here. Erin, thank you very much for having us on with you. When your listeners think of this card, perhaps the easiest way to think of it is the following. Some of you use glasses to help you see. I use this card to help me speak.
Wonderful. I think it's so amazing. So I've mentioned it before to many of our listeners, but about 80% of the people that I see are pediatric patients with autism and adults with autism as well. So I'm very familiar with people with limited speech, challenges in their speech. And so I find it wonderful and amazing that you have learned to adapt to many of your own challenges, and not only learn to adapt, but how to thrive with those challenges. So I'd love if you would kind of give us a glimpse into your childhood, Amit, and tell us a little bit about what it was that maybe brought you guys to this place. How did you get there?
Well, I am confident, certain, in fact, that our challenges are purposed, unique to each of us. Even the same challenge is viewed differently by different individuals. For me, I had autism, pretty beat up, if you will, head banging, screaming, and all. Yet, I had been thinking through all of this, thinking that while I didn't know what was happening, I was certain there was a why this was happening with me.
Absolutely.
My parents had taken on the challenge with me, initially with conventional medicine, which I very much needed. Then with the road less traveled. Along the way, they found the Institutes for Achievement of Human Potential, where, among so much else, they learned a way to teach me to read. And my world changed.
Yeah, I think that's such an amazing part of that story. So I'm going to ask Dad a question now. Dr. Ramlall, what was that like for you? You know, when you're parenting a child, you obviously everybody wants the best for their child. So how did you come about this discovery, and what was it that made you, as I always say, so many people don't presume competence. If someone has a handicap or a disability, that doesn't mean that they're incompetent by any means at all. And so what was it that really drove you to seek answers maybe outside of the box?
I'm going to answer that in a couple of pieces there. And firstly, this idea of presumed incompetence. We judge so many people by what they produce, what they express, with their voice, with their writing, with their production, with how they show up to the world. And we make assumptions based on that, on their abilities to understand, their abilities to think, their abilities to create. And then we presume to put labels onto them. And I'm certain you've seen that in your own life, in your own personal struggles, and with your patients or clients too. And so that was very much the case with us. And a trigger, a sentinel moment in our lives was meeting with a psychologist, getting an assessment done, because in order to access services, oftentimes you need a label, right? Like that's how the
Right.
system works. So they said one part of getting a label was to meet with a psychologist. My wife and I didn't care much for labels, but this was part of the process. And so what then happened is that the psychologist met with us, and after the assessment said to Pratima and I, if you lined up 10,000 kids, Amit would be the third worst in the 10,000. It's like, whoa, right? And then he said the following thing. You don't have to worry, he said to Pratima and I, because Amit would qualify for a teaching assistant in school.
Wow.
And I knew in that moment that that was not my dream for my child.
Mm-hmm.
My dream for my child was not to qualify for a teaching assistant in school, but to go live this life that he had been granted and to go make his own unique mark in the world. And that's when, in addition to whatever else we are doing conventionally, I knew we were going to find another way.
Absolutely.
I'm a physician to Erin, and I knew how this movie would end, right? I knew where this was likely to lead if something didn't change. And I got a lesson. I figured out the lesson for myself in that moment, which is if you don't like the movie, you got to change the script. If you don't like the movie, change the script. Because we knew what the pathways were. We knew where the conventional therapies were going to lead. And the psychologist was telling us, was confirming for us where this movie would play out. And if we didn't like the ending, we had to change the script.
Absolutely.
I hope that answers for your audience how we got there.
Yeah, I think so. Amit, what was that like for you? I know a lot of people I work with speak about this kind of feeling like they're imprisoned in their own body, like they are unable to communicate their needs and desires for so long. What was that like for you?
Well, in this world where some chose to ignore me, act as though I didn't exist, I found a light. I got an opportunity to learn how we humans tick, how we relate. And what would you know, Erin? That is now my profession.
Yeah, I think it's so perfect. I listened to one of your prior interviews where you said the obstacle becomes the way, and that's something that I've tried to live by as well. So I find that so intriguing. So tell us a little bit about the Chintan Project and what you guys are doing.
So, Chintan Project was my vision long before it got started. And it had to do with the certainty of purpose that each of us has a reason for being. And I had that certainty of purpose for me, for others, and my life was helping me get the clarity of the certainty of purpose, of reason for being, of challenge. Certainty
Yes.
of the purpose of challenge. And so, what we do, leveraging this certainty with our expertise in human awareness and achievement, is help business owners solve their people problems, the ones above the level of HR.
Right. So you're delving more into the psychology of relationship, right? Relationship with employees and, with the customer, perhaps those kinds of things versus, the very simplistic, operations, if you will.
Correct. In addition to the relationships with others, and our work has particular focus on those relationships at leadership levels between partners, business owners, families that own businesses, for instance. There is another relationship, Erin, the relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
And in some ways, all we do involves relationships, the relationships with you and the relationship with others. And yes, it is not just operational or strategic consulting. Just today, we met with a client who buys businesses as his business. And we were able to help him connect with why that was so important to him and connect with what he can bring to bear as he buys those businesses beyond money. Each of us has so much to give, so much to offer, and we help you find that so that you might leverage it in your trades with the world.
So what does that process look like for you when you're consulting with a business owner who's maybe struggling, maybe financially, maybe they're struggling with their employees, employee relations, maybe maybe they haven't even started their business yet. So what does that consulting process look like?
Well, each of us in our work lives and also in our personal lives have a place where we are at now. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yep.
And most all of us, all, if we choose to be honest, have somewhere else we'd rather be. Whether our business, our health, whatever. And we help them get clear on that gap. Then, more importantly, clear on the obstacle that's in the way. You mentioned it, and Marcus Aurelius did too. The obstacle in the way is the way. So we help them get clarity on the real obstacle in the way. Then, just like our health, Erin, we put the following to bear. You only have control. You only have control over three things: your perceptions, your decisions, and your actions.
Yeah, absolutely. And isn't it true that when we become in alignment with those things that we're really passionate about, things just start to flow. You don't have to be so concerned about the income coming in, for example, because you're doing what you're passionate about. And yes, obviously there are action steps that need to happen, but at the same time, things really do, I have found, start to just kind of naturally flow. Money starts to flow, the business starts to get busier. All of those kinds of things naturally occur when you're in a state of passion, when you're in, what your true calling is. So I really love what you're doing. Do you have any examples of perhaps people who have gone through your program and then maybe made a different choice after the fact?
Well, when we think of impact on making a different choice, the first person that comes to mind is Dr. Padula. He is a world-renowned optometrist in the US. And more importantly, he is an inventor. And he was torn between growing his practice, selling his practice, bringing in partners, selling his inventions. He was torn with so many options. We said, Bill, why did you become an optometrist in the first place? In particular, why did you become a specialist in low vision care? And he said, I didn't want anyone to go blind if I could help. I didn't want anyone to go blind if I could help.
Mm-hmm.
And as the tears came, so too did the clarity.
Yeah.
Dr. Padula knew exactly what to do. He did not have a crisis of options, as he thought. He had a crisis of purpose. And once he connected with that, he leveraged his invention with a global provider so that his tools can be used to save the vision of millions around the world. He didn't make millions from one individual sale of his technology to a corporation, but he made pennies instead. Just a lot of pennies. He's okay.
Yeah, I think that's such an
To
important
a
point.
you made before about, being in flow when there's that certainty. And I don't think, Erin, that the flow is an interesting thing, because I don't think it is that everything just comes to us. It's that we have that certainty that pain or pleasure, we embrace it and we take that next step, right? It's that willingness to persevere with equally with pain and pleasure. How we know we are on track. When life comes too easily without challenges, or without apparent challenges, without challenges that we notice, we tend to be willfully blind to what faces us. Yet, with your son, with your business, I know there were obstacles, giant obstacles, yet you persevered in the face of pleasures and pains. Isn't that true, Erin?
Absolutely. I think ultimately I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without the challenges that I faced as a mother and as a human being. So many of us, I think, are given some of these obstacles, as you mentioned before, in order to find that purpose, in order to really align with that purpose. And, I was one of those people who I have a lot of interest. I'm just kind of that way. I've always had a lot of interest, and I'm passionate about those interests too. And so I was always trying to figure out, how can I mesh these all together to become some kind of a career where I could actually bring in income and put food on the table, which is also important. So all of those things, I think, combined with my challenges, in order to bring something together that I find to be really beautiful. And it's amazing how all of my early interest, acting and singing and all of that, which then translated into the world of doing a podcast, all of those things kind of translated into something that really I feel is bigger than myself. So something that I'm interested in is, how do you address when people come to you with, like me, lots and lots of interest, lots of things that they are passionate about? How do you kind of funnel those into one thing, or help them to focus on one section of that?
So we start with asking them. So much of our work, Erin, is with questions. You know this too. if you listen to what you just said. You had the key. You said, how do I fashion this thing, this baby that I am building, and create an income to feed my family, etc.? That is one of those very empowering questions. And so we use questions, strategic questions, to find out what it is this individual wants. And fancy as it seems, why?
Yeah.
And we are bulldogs around this. We know that when you find that thing that calls you, there is a tear in your eyes, a certainty, a knowing that's more than a business plan. It doesn't replace the business plan, but it forms the seed from which that oak tree may grow. And so many, Erin, so many don't follow those dreams because they don't know how they can make a living from that. That is, frankly, brainwashing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not true that if you care about humanity, that you can't have that be a paying, profitable career in addition to impact. It's brainwashing that we think there shall be service without reward, and we help our clients get that.
Yeah.
We help them get that there is no separation between the service and the reward. They are instantaneous, but if you don't value money, you will not have it.
Yeah.
Cruel as it sounds, it is accurate when you look at the world.
Yeah, and I found it so important to really understand, like you said, the why behind what you're doing, because ultimately that leads to how you value money. For example, if I don't value having food on my table, then I'm not going to value my own service and the provision of that service to the people, that I'm helping, because ultimately, I recognize that what I do is valuable and has value and brings value to other people's lives. And I should be able to put food on the table, for example, at the end of the day. So I think that's so important. Amit, I'm really interested because you spoke a little bit about the what, but what is your why? Why do you do what you do?
Here's why. Because I knew that if I'm here, there is a reason. This universe of ours is way too efficient to have me here if there is no purpose for me. I knew there must be a reason why. And I made a commitment based on one of those, many of those moments of certainty that we talked about earlier. I knew that I am here to help children of all ages find and follow their true calling, that they may lead the world. And a child, Aaron, I define a child too as one in a state of readiness to learn and to grow. Because if we are not here to learn and to grow, why else are we here?
I think that's beautiful. I couldn't agree more. I think ultimately, we're all here for a purpose. We all serve, the purpose of life to me is finding that purpose, finding that vision, and following that to the best of your ability in this lifetime. So I think that's beautiful. A beautiful way to live your life. I love that you guys are working together. I find it so beautiful that that your father is able to help you. I to be honest, that must have taken a lot of practice when I watch you use the card and how quickly you're able to
Thousands of
translate.
hours.
Yeah.
And thousands of pages of manuscript.
Yeah.
And a lot of pulling out of my dad's hair by him.
I'm sure.
I have proof of that for those video audience people.
But ultimately, I do find the fact that you guys work together so well and so enthusiastically to be very inspiring, not only for children with autism who might be minimally verbal, or but also for the parents. One of the biggest concerns that I hear from a lot of parents of children with autism is that they're concerned that what happens when I die. They're concerned that they won't be able to be around for their child to help them, to assist them in their later adult years. So, the fact that you guys are able to communicate so well is really a beautiful testament and a wonderful example. So,
whatever it is that you think is that challenge, and I get what it must be like for parents. I live still with a couple of those kind. So I get that. And we eat our own cooking, if you will. We do for us what we do for clients. We focus on the questions. How do I? Why do I need this in my life right now? If the opposite, then the thing I wanted did happen, or the thing I wanted didn't, how does it serve me? Sometimes we have nightmares that we spend our lives running away from. What would be the benefit to me if that nightmare did happen? Because the things we resist persist. That's easy in today's world, where so many focus on positive thinking. But what, Erin, about the other side? We have those fantasies too to balance the nightmares. What is the drawback if that fantasy happens? We have learned, we have sought teachers and honed this skill ourselves on asking the hard questions. And for our clients, we hold them accountable to answering their answers. It's not just up to us. For your clients, it's not just up to you, is it?
No. Yeah, and I love that too, because years ago, actually, I wrote a book on, it's called Mind Over Fatter, and that book was about the mental emotional component when it comes to attempting to lose weight. And one of the things that exercises that I recommended that people do is to do what I called worst case scenario. So play out the worst case scenario, because you're going to think about it anyway. You might as well get it out of the way.
Yeah, take it from the unconscious to the conscious, like become
Right.
aware of what that is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So really to go to that place of worst case scenario, okay, and then what? Because ultimately, worst case scenario, even if it does play out, we need to understand how we get ourselves out of that, or use that as fuel to move forward. And so I think that's, such an important concept. Awesome. Okay, guys. So we have now reached our rapid fire question section. And we do this with all of our guests here at the Remedy Revolution. We ask 8 questions of each of our guests to learn a little bit more about them. It's a little bit fun. It's a little bit silly. And I hope y'all enjoy it. Okay, number 1. If you could choose only one natural remedy for the rest of your life, what would it be?
The same one that I've used for as long as I've known anything. It's this: empowering questions. It's a very fancy pill that's hard to find in the marketplace. Those empowering questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. All right. So tell us something most people don't know about you.
My parents had to homeschool me. I guess it's unfair to say had to, but it's my story, isn't it?
Yeah.
I got kicked out of daycare because I bit kids.
Yeah, well,
I never went back to formal school. No worries, Erin. I wouldn't bite you.
It's okay, Amit. School's overrated anyway, right? Like, I think your parents did a fantastic job. All right. If I were to compile a playlist of happy music, what song would you suggest be added? I know it's a tough one.
Got it. Frank Sinatra. I did it my way.
I love it. Perfect. Amit, what's your favorite guilty pleasure?
Well, guilt is an interesting thing because I work hard to help me and my clients not have guilt. But I think I know what you're after. So for me, it's finding someone who inspires me and watching hours of YouTube about them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would say I'm probably guilty of some of that too, but all right. What's the most influential book you've ever read?
It's a series, Erin. By far, it's the great books of the Western world. It's like a dictionary of the leading ideas that have shaped our civilizations.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And I know you've read quite a bit, right? I did read a little bit about you on your
I
website.
stopped counting after 14,000. I gave my dad hernias carrying books from the library and then apparently not reading them at home because I had read them at the library. My mom said, "Why'd you make him fetch them home then?" Well, the answer is obvious. I liked the books.
Just surround yourself, learn by osmosis, right? Just bring the books in the space. I think that's actually, there's something to that, I think. All right. Okay. What does the word revolution mean to you?
Well, the state of returning to the origin, the source, in so many ways. I think that what you are doing for your audience is getting them full circle to what really matters to them.
Thank you. Yeah, I absolutely, that's my goal anyway. That's the intent, right?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. And what does the word remedy mean to you?
For me, remedy is along the lines of healing, which has the same root words as wellness, interestingly, and wealth, interestingly, wheel. And for me, remedy means to help make whole again.
I love that so much. Absolutely. And if you could impart one piece of wisdom onto our listeners, what would that be?
Whatever you are facing, know that this challenge is purposed. And if you are facing it, it's because you have the perfect toolkit to solve it.
Absolutely.
Your purpose, your challenge, and your tools are purposed.
It's been such a pleasure speaking to you both, Amit and Dr. Ramlall. Can you please let us know where people can find you?
This has been a privilege for us too. Please have your listeners connect with us at chintanproject.com, CHINTAN project.com, and join us in our newsletter, where you will get exposed to this weird kind of thinking. And just for your audience, if they write to us there, we have a PDF for them on 5 tips for self-care. And a little hint, it teaches you how to use my favorite remedy of empowering questions to care for you.
Thank you both so much. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I really hope everything, your wildest dreams are far exceeded with Chintan Project. I really find what you're doing so empowering and so fascinating, and best of luck to you. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
With hope as a guiding light, through darkest days we'll fight the night. With a whole lot of passion, with a whole lot of truth, remedy revolution is here for you.